Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all is well. Keep up the excellent work. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Today is Friday, Erev Shabbat Kodesh Parashat Vayakel Pikudeh, and we will take out a second Sefer Torah tomorrow, Parashat HaChodesh. And as we said in many of the classes in the past week, we will be announcing the Rosh Chodesh Nisan tomorrow. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach. Most probably tomorrow night is the Seder Tawahid in Ahava, the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the Saturday night. They welcome in the month HaChodesh Hazeh Rosh Chodashim, right? Lachem Rosh Chodashim. It's the first month of all the Jewish months on the calendars. Nisan. It's called Nisan because of the miracles that Hashem did. Nes, Nissim v'neflaot, and Hashem will show us Be'ezrat Hashem Nissim v'neflaot with the coming of the Mashiach. The miracles when Mashiach comes are going to be so awesome that the miracles of Egypt will be forgotten, and that's why there's a halacha that you still have to go out of your way to remember the miracles of Mitzrayim. That's what we say in the Haggadah. Yemei chayecha, right? Hayamim v'halelot, it's a machloket. Yemei hayecha is now olam hazeh. Kol yemei hayecha lahavi yemot HaMashiach, to teach us that even when Mashiach comes, we're going to have to remember, even though it's going to be hard to remember. If a guy makes $1 million be'ah, it's nice. Inshallah, a bell every half hour on the hour. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. But if he makes $100 million be'ah, he might forget the $1 million be'ah, but we have to be appreciative. Mashiach is going to be the $1 billion be'ah, so we might forget the $1 million be'ah. So therefore, Hashem tells us, Lahavi Yemot HaMashiach, even when Mashiach comes, we're going to have to remember the miracles of Yesiyat Misraim. Be'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach. We have Parashat Vayakel. We learn out the laws of Shabbat from Vayakel. There's a misunderstanding out there what Shabbat is all about. And that is, some people out there think I work all week and now it's time to nam and play tennis and that's it. Obviously, whatever it takes for someone to enjoy, you have to enjoy. Now that the day is longer, the gardeners are already blowing the items and the sun is out, but it's still freezing ice cold. But we'll get there eventually, but Bezrat Hashem. But the day is longer because it is the springtime. And of course, we know candlelighting tonight is later than usual, 6:42. There are halachot if someone wants to make Shabbat early. Ask your local rabbi how to go ahead with that. But anyway, we learn out the laws of Shabbat from the Mishkan. Shabbat Hashem gave to us for one reason, and one reason only, because He loves us and He wants us to connect and He wants us to accomplish in this world. All week long, we have an excuse. I'm working, I'm quadruple parking on Avenue U, I'm online by Dr. Fariwa. We should only have good health and he should bring us to the Mashiach. We have excuses, but on Shabbat, mafi excuses, and therefore we have to connect by going to classes. So if the day is long, you could do your thing, whatever it is that you're doing. You could even take your nap, and of course you go to classes to learn Torah, Be'ezrat Hashem, because that was the only reason why Hashem gave us Shabbat. We were saved from Egypt because of Shabbat. When Moshe Rabbeinu was the prince of Egypt, he told, I'm saying Haman, Ahashverosh, he told, it looks like the holiday of Purim is still lingering. It should always linger on forever and ever, the Simcha. But he told Paro, if you're going to work them every day, they're not going to be able to produce. So you have to give them a day off. And Paro agreed. And he said, which day should we give them off? And he says, Yallah, we'll make it Saturday. And they gave them off Shabbat. Shevet Levi did not work in Mitzrayim, as we know. So if you're a Kohen and Levi, that's why we break the middle matzah. Why do we break the middle matzah on Passover? We have Kohen, Levi, Israel, because Shevet Levi only had half of the troubles. They did throw the babies of the Levi'im in the river, and of course, when a person sees another person suffer, they suffer. We are one for all and all for one. We're all the same clusters, grapes on the same cluster, as the story with Shelemah HaMelech goes that we mentioned in the past. So since we're one for all and all for one, we had a broken heart. So hence we break the middle matzah, because the Shevet Levi were not slaves. How did they not become slaves? BTW. The answer is because Paro unfortunately skeduched us. That's why it's very hard to finagle. The Jewish people are the best lawyers. We have Gemara. We learn how to know and how to go there, etc. But back then, we were, when somebody's good, they always get what they call finagled, and because they think the other guy's good. And the harami never gets finagled because he thinks the other guy's a harami, so he makes sure to read the fine print. And Paro got us all working. We'll pay you all this, and the Jews were getting good money to work for Paro. And then he runs out of money, and little by little, he ends up saying, "I'll give you on credit. The stimulus check is in the mail from Joe Biden," but he forgot the address. Long story short, that's how we ended up becoming slaves. But when he was giving money, Shevet Levi wanted to still learn Torah and stay in the Torah learning, like all of you are doing at this moment. They knew that money can't buy me Torah, right? Yeah, it's not the money, it's the learning Torah that's important. Of course, we have to work. Of course, we have to support a family, but we have to make the main reason of our creation and our mission in life and our vision is, of course, to learn Torah. And Shevet Levi did not go for the money. The other 11 tribes are laughing at Shevet Levi. Look how much flus we have. We could go to St. Bart's on the tables of the cars, this vacation, that vacation, and all of a sudden they became slaves, Shema Yisrael. So since Shevet Levi were not duped, they were not working. And when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the day off of Shabbat, like we said, with the permission of Paro, every Friday night, the Jewish people would sit down, and the Leviim came from Goshen, and they sat to learn Torah with the Jewish people. And that's what gave us hope. And that's what got us out of the exile, the suffering, and the troubles that we were in. And that's why there's a famous song out there, just one Shabbos and we'll all be free, because if Am Yisrael kept 2 Shabbatot, the entire Jewish nation keeps Shabbat, Mashiach will come, and we already kept one. All we need is one more. They try to do it in Corona. If anyone's on lockdown anyway, and no flying and no driving and no this and no that, so they try to make an awareness, but unfortunately Mashiach's not here yet, but it's coming. It's coming, Be'ezrat Hashem, inshallah, faster than we ever think. But anyway, Shevet Levi learned Torah with them, and that's why Paro says, "Lo tasu agudot agudot." What is this whole thing, right? Don't make these groups, because he knew that it was giving inspiration to the people. So Shabbat is the greatest beracha ever. Hashem called it a present. He told Moshe, "I have a present for you." That's why it says, "Yismach Moshe." Tomorrow morning in the Amidah we say, "Yismach Moshe b'matanat helko." Moshe was happy with the present that he got. He got the Jewish people to keep Shabbat with Paro. That's why it says Yismach Moshe b'matanat helko. And we learn out what we are allowed to do and we're not allowed to do from the concept of Shabbat Kodesh, as we know from the Mishkan, because the Torah tells us how important the Mishkan is. How many books are there out there that speak about meat and dairy? There are a dime a dozen. Every rabbi out there wrote a book on meat and dairy. You have them in Hebrew, you have them in English over the years, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of halachot and Torah on the subject of meat and dairy. How many words does the Torah say regarding meat and dairy? Lo tevashel gedim b'halev imo. Fe'ela do 5 words and millions of pages pages out there on the subject. If for 5 words you need millions of pages, imagine 4 entire parashiot. There are 4 parashot that speak about the Mishkan. We have Tirumah, we have Tetzaveh, we have Vayakel, and we have Pikudeh, which are this week's parashiot. Imagine, so there are 4 parashiot for 5 words. It's a whole world of info. Imagine 4 parashiot. It's a whole everything. It's 1,000 universes times 4 because of the 4 parashiot. That's how much info and that's how much holiness. And as holy as the Mishkan was, everybody has to know that it does not desecrate Shabbat, because there are some things that we do on Shabbat. For example, you're not allowed to make something bleed on Shabbat. You're not allowed to peel off a scab. A person can't do whatever it might be. Do something. However, when it comes to a milah, we do it on Shabbat. Someone might think building the Mishkan on Shabbat is something that overpowers Shabbat, and the answer is no. Shabbat overpowers the building of the Mishkan, and since it's intertwined with the Mishkan, the Gemara counts. Our rabbis count 39 melachot that they did to build the Mishkan, 39 main trees, and on every tree there are branches which we call toledot, right? Every Av Melacha has a tolda, and because of there's so many things that we had at the Mishkan, so there's different umbrellas, 39 different umbrellas. We had some in order to make the dye. The first 11 of the 39 was to make the dye of the garments and the materials. Imagine 11 out of 39. That's pretty much, that's 25% almost of the melachot are just to make the dye, because you have to plant, you have to plow, you have to grind, you have to separate, you have to this, you have to that, and that's how we get to making the dye, because the Torah tells us we have argaman, purple wool, we have techelet, light blue wool, etc. So to make the dye, and now we know you're not allowed to plant on Shabbat just like they planted for the dye. We're not allowed to this on Shabbat because they did it for the Mishkan. 39 happens to be the number of days that it takes for when a child is biologically created, conceived, it's 39 days till it becomes a child. And Shabbat is really the essence of what we are. On the 40th day, Hashem threw the neshama into that child. So that's why when they refer to the laws of Shabbat, they call it 39 melachot, 40 melachot, etc. What 40 minus 1? Why mention the 40? And because the 39 and 40 has significance as well. So that's what we learn out in the beginning of the parasha regarding Shabbat. Sheshet yamim ta'aseh melacha ubayom hashvi'i yeh lachem kodesh. Shabbat Shabbaton. Right? Now, our rabbis asked a question, and we discussed this last week in synagogue. How come the Torah brings up the 6 days to work? Obviously, if it says don't work on the 7th day, then the 6 days we're gonna work. So why does the Torah have to say Sheshet Yamim Ta'aseh Melacha? And the answer is that Shabbat is the greatest melacha we have. But how do we get more out of Shabbat? How do we elevate Shabbat? Shabbat has the possibility to be holy more and more every single week, holier than last week, and it could last. It could last. It goes till eternity. So how do you get more out of Shabbat? How do you pump Shabbat to be even holier? The answer is it depends on how holy your week is. When it says Sheshet Yamim Taseh Beracha or Bayom HaShevi'i, that means the Shabbat is contingent on the 6 days of work. So the more you live your life holy during the week, the holier Shabbat becomes. The holier Shabbat becomes for you, the more beracha there is for you from the Shabbat. So if a person, and we all got to do what we got to do, but we just have intention to do it. And when we have intention to do it properly, it becomes a mitzvah. We have to go to work. So you if a guy goes to work, just hey, time to make the donuts, then he doesn't get rewarded for working. But if a guy says, I'm going to work because I got to earn a living so I could send my kids to yeshiva so they can learn Torah and go on the path of God, now you're going to work is made more holy. And that means your weekday becomes holier, and then Shabbat will become holier, and it will give you even more beracha, be'ezrat Hashem. And that's why the Torah intertwines the Sheshet Yamim, the 6 days, together with the seventh day. Before we get to our next subject, I just need to tell you there was a collector that used to go around. Some collectors are already shul furniture. We know them from over the years, and unfortunately Hashem should watch us all and he should rest in peace. We'll say this for his neshama, but I remember maybe 15 years ago, even more, a little cute old rabbi collector came around collecting all the time. And when he came on Parashat Vayakel, he opens up a chumash to show me a divrei Torah, because sometimes there are people out there, they get embarrassed to speak in public. It's like a fear, the fear of public speaking. When I was a kid, I would say manashtana from under the table, b'chav ktir, right? And guess who else, believe it or not, was afraid? Only to teach, are we allowed to say this? Chacham Ovadia was scared to teach in public. Imagine he had classes every single week with 100,000 people listening and watching his class every Saturday night. 100,000 people before the internet was created. 100,000 people. Coca-Cola of Israel called Chacham Ovadia's secretary and said, could we leave a can of Diet Coke on Chacham Ovadia's desk? We'll give you 50K. I don't know if it was shekel. I don't know if it was dollars. I don't know if it was Bitcoin. But whatever it is, Hamadia said, absolutely not. We don't make money from the Torah. Torah is not cash advance, as they say. And then Coca-Cola came back, BTW, and Coca-Cola said, but last week you made a commercial. And last week we made a commercial. What kind of commercial? By the way, the rabbi's secretary tried to say, Rabbi, 50K, we'll give it to tzedakah. How you doing? Hamadia said, absolutely not. Like when we asked our father for allowance as a kid, absolutely not. So too, Hamadia said, absolutely not. But Coca-Cola, like I said, came back and said last week you made a commercial. Hamadia was Passover time. And Hamadia was saying when you eat the maror, you got to get the bugless lettuce. And Hashem should make shalom in the world and give us back Gaza. We'll build Trump-orama over there, whatever Trump wants to build. How you doing? Gaza Largo, whatever it's called. Bezrat Hashem, all the evil will be eradicated from the world. But in Gaza, we had a city, a place called Gush Katif, and they invented a great invention where you could have lettuce. They grew bugless lettuce. They took like a shallow swimming pool, put sand in it, right, without all the buggies and without all the things, and then grew it in greenhouses so the bugs can't get in there. And this way, they weren't infested with bugs. So it was called Gush Katif lettuce. They were the first ones to invent it. And Havadia said, when you use maror, try to use the Gush Katif. Coca-Cola said, you made an advertisement for Gush Katif. Havadia says, an advertisement. I just said they should buy the bugless. Long story short, Havadia spoke to hundreds of thousands in one shot. By the kotel, he would get up to speak to 120,000 people. Imagine, and he has no, of course he did have fear, but he himself told me he was scared to speak in public. And Chacham Ezra Atiyah, Alav Shalom, told Hamadia when he was younger, he said, go into the Beit Midrash of Porat Yosef, Put pillows on the chairs in the midrash when nobody's in there, and go start talking to the pillows. This way you break your fear of speaking in public. And guess what? That little old cute man tells me, if anyone you ever meet gets a fear of speaking in public, tell him the first pasuk in this week's parasha, and that is Vayaker Moshe et kol adat bnei Israel. Moshe gathered the entire Jewish nation. Vayomer alehem, and he tells them, Ele hadevarim asher tziva Adonai lasot otam. Moshe says, these are the things that Hashem says. The rabbi told me, Vayakel, when there's a whole crowd of kihila of people, it's not Moshe speaking. Ele hadevarim asher tziva Hashem. It's Hashem speaking through your throat. So if you ever have to get up to make a speech, Vayesheva berachot, or the night of Pesach, or whatever it might be, do not fear, because if you're talking to a group of people, it is Hashem speaking through your throat. He will give you the heavenly assistance, so it's not you. So have no fear. I guess Hashem is here. Not I guess, but Hashem is here, and may that be a merit for the cute little rabbi who taught it to me. We'll go to the next parasha, Pikudeh, and that there's a lot to speak about in Vayakel, a lot to speak about in Pikudeh, but there's a famous question when it comes to the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, because the Torah says, make the Kohen Gadol's clothing out of sha'anez, out of wool and linen interwoven. And that is technically a prohibition in the Torah. Sometimes you bump into somebody and their jacket looks a little sha'anezi. You ask them, did you check it? And God bless our community. If they weren't aware, they check it on Sunday. If you meet them on Shabbat, they check it right away. And Baruch Hashem, nowadays, with the stretchy suits, they're all nylon and rayon and how you doing? So the Shanez problem is not as much as in the 80s with the Hugo Boss underneath the ring around the collar. There was always Shanez in those things. And then I think that's in Germany. How you doing? They're still planting the seeds. Kilon Haramiyah. Long story short, Shanez is prohibited. And it's a sin that's so bad that our rabbis tell us the word Shanez came from the letters Satan Az. The Satan is getting strength from wearing shatnez. So every person that's listening, of course, we all check our suits, but when we buy suits, we have to check them for shatnez, and shatnez applies to women as well. It's not only a man thing. Obviously, in regular clothing, etc., we don't have to check, but if there's something like a blazer or something that you have, first you have to look in the ingredients. What are the materials in the item? Is it wool and linen? And many years ago, he should rest in peace, my father Bel Tashbi, we were sitting in our usual row in Ahiezer, and the person in front of us, it was Kippur, and my father tells him, we're talking 45 years ago, before you were all born, and my father tells him, you know, that jacket looks shatnezi. He thought he said shnezi. How you doing? He said shatnezi, and he tells him, what in heaven's name is shatnez? He says it's a sin from the Torah to have wool and linen interwoven in a garment, and if someone wears it, it's a sin from the Torah. He never heard of it. My father said, take off the jacket, let's look in the at the materials. They look at the ingredients and the nutritional facts, and they see it's 50% wool, 50% linen, and he took off the jacket, he left it in shul, and you're not allowed to even give it away. There are all halachot, ask your local rabbi, but he did not wear shanez that Kippur, Baruch Hashem, and every time I see that guy, 45 years later, he tells me, your father saved me from wearing shanez on Yom Kippur. So shanez is a serious thing, believe it or not. Today is not a shanez class. However, Maran Shulchan Aruch says you can't have curtains hanging down in the house made out of wool and linen. What you talking about, Willis? Curtains are not something you wear. Believe it or not, it's because sometimes the kids in the 80s, if we touch the curtains, we got a finger cut off, Shema Yisrael. But nowadays, the kid tells the adults what to do, and the kids could be heck playing, wrapping themselves. They come out of the shower, they run out without clothes, they're cold, they'll wrap themselves, believe it or not. So that's something to think and bring into consideration. Long story short, Hashem gives us the materials for the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, and in there is straight out wool and linen. How could the Torah tell us wool and linen together in the garment of the Kohen Gadol? And our rabbis give a fabulous answer, and that is, why is wool and linen prohibited in the first place? Of course, it's a chok, and we don't know the full depth of all of these, every mitzvah, but especially of a mitzvah we call a chok. We had Parah Adumah last week. This week is Shanez. It's a chok as well, but our rabbis tell us the tip of the iceberg, and that is because of the original first murder in the Torah in history. Cain killed Hevel. Hevel brought a korban, and Cain brought a korban, and one brought wool, one brought linen, and what ended up happening? Cain killed Hevel because of the jealousy of the korbanot. Hashem said, everyone has to remember how bad jealousy and fighting is, that it led to murder. So when you buy a garment, you say, hey, I got to check it for Shanez. Why? No wool and linen. Why? Because of the sin in Cain and Abel. Let's rectify that sin and fix it up. Who was the greatest peacemaker in world history? It was Aharon HaKohen. Aharon was such a peacemaker that when he passed away, we should all live and be well, he had 88,000 Aharons named after him in his lifetime. Do you know what 88,000? Aharon was the first Aharon. There wasn't anyone named Aharon, and they were all named after him. He went, when Moshe ran away to save his life for 60 years in Midian, Aharon was still there, and he made peace his entire life between husband and wife and partners, and they always named their kid Aharon. And we should live and be well. There were 88,000 Aharons carrying Aharon's coffin at his funeral. Imagine, that's how many Aharons there were, because he made so much peace in his lifetime. So Aharon Shalom, Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom, Hever Metamidav Shel Aharon HaKohen, Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. And therefore, if he makes peace, and the first fight in history which led to murder was wool and linen, but he's fixing that and then some. So he wears wool and linen because he fixes all of that up, which is a lesson of shalom, of course, for everybody in the world. And we should always have peace, and we should always work on peace. Rodef Hesed, Rodef Shalom, Bezrat Hashem, and Shalom became Hashem's name. As we always say, you're not allowed to say the word Shalom in the facility. It's a question at all if you could talk in the facility, but if you're in the shower, showering, and you have to go to shul, one of the kids, they scream Shabbat Shalom. You can't scream Shabbat Shalom in the hammam, especially without a kippah, believe it or not, even in the pool on a Friday. In August, it should get warm for one day, and someone's in the pool and they're not wearing a kippah, they shouldn't say Shabbat Shalom, believe it or not, because Hashem loves Shalom so much that you can't, it became his name, and therefore you can't say it without a kippah on your head, just like other names of Hashem. There's a lot more to talk about, and in classes, in all the synagogues, your local rabbi, there's every kind. As you thought there was 31 flavors, and at all the shuls you have 3 million flavors. Every class, every type, every rabbi, every this. So everyone can find their rabbi that they like. They can find this class that they like, this subject that they like, and Bezrat Hashem, by all the learning Torah on Shabbat, just like it got us out of Mitzrayim, it will get us out of this exile, and we'll all be in Yerushalayim. Hope everyone has the greatest day. Shabbat Shalom, Besorot Tobot, Yeshuot V'Nehamot.